Our final presentation for today basically is veterans benefits, and I'm proud to have with us today Thomas Spencer. Thomas is Veterans Liaison for VITAS Healthcare, and he serves veteran communities within Lake and Sumter counties. We're pleased to have Thomas with us. He's been with us on a number of occasions now. He is a highly decorated veteran of multiple foreign combat theaters. He is a former liaison for elected members of both the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. He is also a 10-year veteran of the Department of Veterans Affairs. So he is a guy that knows all the rules, knows all the back channels, knows all the contact points, and can steer you in the right direction for how to take efficient advantage of veterans benefits. So with that, I give you Thomas Spencer.
Well, I like to say, I'm glad that you're here. One of the things that I really take pride in is being a veteran, is being able to have the ability, and I consider privilege, to go out and serve those that served. Because a lot of the times, Veterans Affairs can be an extremely dubious kind of entity when it comes to with its size and with regard to how it even operates as a federal entity. But what happens is, what I love being able to get the privilege of being able to come out and do is come out and really explain to a lot of people some of the benefits that I wish I could sit down and explain all of them, but we would need an entire day, if not a week, to sit down and go through all of the nitty-gritties that Veterans Affairs has to offer. But today what I like to do is give you some of the highlight areas and some of the key things that all vets would qualify for when they take the opportunity to go out and get them. Of course, that would be me, yes, retired U.S. Army. I work for VITAS Healthcare. VITAS Healthcare itself is an entity that is based in healthcare, but it is a hospice provider and palliative care. Now, that's end-of-life healthcare. Now, what I do has nothing directly related to that portion. The portion that I do with VITAS Healthcare is to go into the veteran communities and make them aware of everything that they're eligible to receive. Of course, the hospice is an element, and Veterans Affairs offers that as well. We even receive some of the patients to come aboard to us from Veterans Affairs. So it's a shared relationship. But me, the thing that I love is it gives me the ability to get out into the community and just explain and share what benefits and things that veterans receive. Now, I can say for myself, and for those who are, if you're came in, or you were at 1980 in the military or before, we used to receive these in the mail. I used to love getting these in the mail. It was a great element because it gave you an overstatement of everything that you're eligible to receive from Veterans Affairs. But then they just stopped doing it. They didn't give a reason. They didn't give a definition. They just stopped. And as soon as these stopped, would you realize that the veterans that came to make use of services of Veterans Affairs dropped by almost 60%? Once that book stopped coming out, because they didn't know. So a lot of vets would believe, I'm not eligible anymore. They don't send me the booklet. I don't get the letter in the mail. Because now they modernized after 2012 and everything went online. Well, they didn't tell everyone that everything went online. They also didn't tell you how to find stuff that's online. That's one of the things that for me, that is, it hurts, because it's kind of like they just dropped the ball on that one. One of the things that there's a lot of websites. This is a really good one. I always recommend that all vets take the opportunity to go to archives.gov. Reason being, on archives.gov, you have the ability to request all of your medical and military records. You also have the ability to request replacement medals of all the medals that you earned while you were in the military. And they give all these things to you for free. Now, if you had records that were destroyed in the fire that occurred back in the 1970s, needless to say, things were destroyed. However, there still may be records that do exist. It could be copies of medals. It could be copies of anything that still exists. And a lot of the times, it's on there where you'll be able to get it. And it's at no cost. You fill out the form electronically. Of course, it just asks you the basic information with regard to your name, date of birth, social security number, when you served. The when you served doesn't even have to be extremely specific. It could even just be as simple as the years, or even a guess of the years. I say this a lot because I run into a lot of World War II veterans. And some of the dates could be a little cloudy simply because of the time it's been since they served. And they could just put in there somewhere between 1940 and 1944. That's okay, because it gives them a window where to look. It's incredible information that's on there. But the VA's website, it's good and it's bad. It's good because there is a lot of information on there. The bad is it's sometimes hard to find information on there because they have a link that's in there. It's really interesting. He says, I think it's almost comical, because it'll say, VA benefits from A to Z. That sounds like a simplistic system. It's like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. But when you click it, everything in its grandmother comes up from A to Z. Then you have to click this link. And then within that link is like 10 more links. So eventually, you're not getting to where you want to go as easy. Rephrase. I would say people who are my age and up don't find it in there as easily. If it's a person that just got out of the military and they're 19, 20 years old, well, of course, they came up in an era where everything was technology. I didn't. So for me, finding things electronically is not always that easy. It can become a little tedious. That's why I like to make certain that when I get the opportunity and the privileges to come out and speak to veterans, I love getting with them one-on-one. Then we can sit down and map out a plan as to how you can get a lot, if not all, of the benefits that you've earned. The most simplistic thing is the basic eligibility for services and benefits and even compensation from Veterans Affairs. All that has to be met, the most is it served in the military and didn't get put out dishonorably. Everything else don't get put out dishonorably. Dishonorable discharge is the only criteria that will make you ineligible for Veterans Affairs services, benefits, and compensations. However, within Veterans Affairs in the benefits section, they have the ability of you being able to do what's called a discharge appeal, where they represent you and at no cost at getting your discharge overturned from being dishonorable. A lot of the times that gets done and it gets transferred over to a general discharge. A general discharge is not a dishonorable discharge because it's now a general. You are eligible to receive everything that Veterans Affairs has to offer. That's why when I tell people, everyone that served in the military is eligible for Veterans Affairs. Because even that dishonorable discharge one still can get something done. They just have to go and utilize the system. Another myth is this one. That is a myth. Veterans did not and do not have to have served in a war zone to receive benefits from Veterans Affairs. You simply had to don the uniform. Most of the veterans to whom I speak served in the military in the eras that was before 1980, and not only before or after 1980, but before the 9/11 occurred in our country. Well, the rules changed then, but those rules don't apply. Those rules are for those from 9/11 forward, not what came before it. So a lot of times people get the confusion of that you had to serve in war to actually receive the benefits. And that is, and you'll hear me say this a lot, a myth. Myths exist with regard to Veterans Affairs. And Veterans Affairs doesn't really do, in my opinion, an appropriate job of dispelling those myths. I always tell people, went over those. I always talk to people, how often do you see commercials in television or even newspapers or magazines about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? That's almost every day. It's like a deluge of those coming on television, telling you about the Plan B, Plan C, D, all these different types. When was the last time you received or saw something about Veterans Affairs? Anywhere. A billboard, newspaper, nothing. The closest thing that I've seen, which is, I think it's funny and embarrassing. The only time I saw something with a commercial that had something to do with Veterans Affairs, it was with a cell phone company that's utilizing their internet ability to market the medical, where you can see your doctor on a screen now. And the commercial wasn't even for Veterans Affairs. They just were like a tag part of it. I believe it was T-Mobile is the one that was the screen. VA does not advertise, and I've never understood that. And that is horrible because we have such an enormous population of veterans within the United States. It's in the millions of veterans. And then when you consider veterans and spouses, the number goes up. But they just don't give the information. You have to almost go out and get it, and it should never be that way. These are the different types of discharges. And like I said, anything other than that dishonorable, well, of course, bad conduct is a dishonorable as well, but anything other than a dishonorable will make you eligible to receive benefits. Now, this one is true. Nothing, absolutely nothing will happen to Veterans Affairs without some kind of proof you served in the military. It used to be that you had to have your DD-214 or discharge papers. That's been changed primarily because of the fires that occurred back in the 1970s where records were destroyed. Now, a veteran, that's why, again, I'm listing the archives on here. Anything that shows that you served in the military is sufficient. If you have a copy of orders for a medal that you received, a TDY order, a certificate of that you were transferring from one post to another, anything that identifies that you donned uniform is sufficient when you utilize a veteran service officer or one of the claim locations to do the filing for you. And that's primarily designed because a lot of the times veterans don't have information. Sometimes, I know for myself, I'm a shoebox kind of guy. I have a lot of my records and medals and things of that nature. I kept them in a box, kind of like when I was in the military. And there are things in there that if my 214 for some reason got lost, of course we can get it from archives, I have copies of so many things in there that would satisfy the need to prove that, yes, I did serve in the military. Here in Florida, one of the things that I love, we have county veteran assistance offices in Lake and Sumter counties, and they service the needs of veterans in filings that are done electronically at no cost to the veteran. That's one of the things that I always strongly recommend to vets when they make filings of any sort. Do it electronically. Do not do it on paper. The old method, and this was back from when I first got out of the military, I retired back in 1998, we used to go in, you would fill out 850,000 forms, sign off on all these things, and submit that to Veterans Affairs to get whatever it is. And then it takes a year or two. And then you hear nothing. Then you contact them back and they're like, oh, well, we have no record that you submitted anything. That's why it moved to electronic and making the use of veteran service officers. Because when it's done electronic, if something gets lost, whatever was being filed for, you get it. Because now it's trackable. It's trackable. One of the great things also in the archives.gov, if the veteran passes away, their next of kin, surviving spouse, their children, they can also make those requests for records, medals, and things as well, and file for stuff on their behalf, even after the veteran's passed away. Again, these are some of the things that are extremely important. Of course, we already talked about in good detail with regard to the discharge papers. But something else that actually comes in is something that's necessary is if the veteran is married, let Veterans Affairs know. Because there are spousal and survivor benefits, and there's also benefits for the children as well that go into effect with regards to Veterans Affairs. One of the ones that I like to express to a lot of the younger veterans, and some of the times even like ones like myself that have grandchildren, Veterans Affairs also offers things such as daycare support. They have pet therapy where Veterans Affairs will provide dogs or even cats, certain animals that are life assist animals, or just the ones for care that are just there with, at no cost for the veterans. It's priceless and extensive, the list of things that Veterans Affairs has. Now, of course, if the veteran passes away, let Veterans Affairs know. Otherwise, you're committing this thing called fraud. You don't want to do that with the federal government. Fraud is a pretty big no-no with the federal government. Everyone's heard what the IRS does to you. They do the same thing from Veterans Affairs. So when that occurs, let them know. And we'll get into some of the benefits that continue even after the veteran passes away. Service-connected disabilities is one of the other things that I love expressing to a lot of the veterans when it comes to receiving and getting services. A big myth. I've spoken with quite a few people at the table that we have out there from VITAS with regard to eligibility from Veterans Affairs and getting the services. One of the biggest myths that's floating around out there is if you make too much money, you don't qualify for Veterans Affairs. Or if the value of your property is too high, that's considered part of your assets and you do not qualify for Veterans Affairs. That is an enormous myth. The facts are that every veteran qualifies for services. The only differences within regard to those services is that veterans they have, I believe it's still 13 priority groups of veterans as to how they receive and what they get and what they pay for. They have categories such as Category 1, which is someone who received the Medal of Honor. Okay, you receive the Medal of Honor, you get everything and you pay for nothing. But all the way down to Category 12 is when you have the veteran and their family that one of two categories exists for them. They refuse to give what their income is, or they have a high income. But see, it's still a priority group. And the only thing that's going to happen with that group, you have a copay. The same kind of copay that you would have if you had Blue Cross, Aetna, or any other kind of health insurance. When you go to see your primary care, it's anywhere between $8 to $12 as your copay. If you get medications, the most expensive that you're going to spend is about $25. And that's a tier 1 narcotic that you would be getting. So regular medications that you would be paying for, anywhere between $5 to $20. But when you come into the realm of service-connected disabilities, well, that changes the paradigm. Everything changes once you get rated with service-connected disabilities. And those didn't have to occur in combat. Those can occur in the regular job that they did in the military. Service-connected disabilities can be any type of injury. And I can guarantee every veteran that served in the military had some kind of injury or illness while they were in there. And the ones that are the most common, there's 5 group categories. Your feet, your knees, your lower back, your shoulders, hearing and vision. Reason I list those because these are the most common. Everybody that went to basic training, what did you carry on your back when you went on road marches? A rucksack, equipment, water, ammunition, a rifle. Long walks, trust me, they sucked. I hated them. That's your feet. And what comes next is that big joint in between your leg there is called the knee. Well, that's supporting some weight too. That's called walking, jumping out of the back of the vehicles, carrying equipment, picking equipment up. That's where your lower back and your shoulders come in. Sound and hearing. Vehicles are extremely loud in the military. I can speak from experience of being in the Army, even though I served in military intelligence. Acronym, oxymoron. I've heard that a million times. They conflict. Doesn't make any sense. But it does. I was in military intelligence. I passed the test. I got there. But even going out into the field, you're in vehicles like the Deuce and a half, 2.5-ton truck, the 5-ton truck. You're in the area of armored vehicles, tanks. You go out to the range and you're firing your rifle, handgun, hand grenades. If you're in artillery, self-explanatory of the explosive sounds you're going to hear, or as the guns fire. Those things affect every one of those particular parts of your body. I explain this to veterans. Everyone, when they went in the military, had a physical, an examination that you qualified to get in the military. When you got out, you were not in the same physical condition you were in when you went into the military. It's impossible. You suffered some damage. If you ever went on sick call, which I did, I don't take any shame in that. I got sick, got hurt, injury here and there. Each one of those, guess what? Service-connected disability. As you get older, those injuries that you sustained that would, at the time, seemed simple. I mean, when I first went in the military, I was 18 years old. I mean, I could run through a brick wall and tear a shoulder and be good in 2 weeks like it didn't happen. As I've gotten older, well, that shoulder injury is not the same as it was when I was 18, 19, 20. I'm dealing with the pain from it. Guess what? That's service-connected disability. It happened when I was in the military. Once you go in and you get rated for any of those 5 areas. Now, of course, there's far more specific areas of injuries and things that have occurred. All of these things are going to be related to something that happened while you were in the military. When you get rated at above 40% collectively, you pay for nothing at Veterans Affairs. You receive everything that they have except dental. Only way to get dental is if you had something happen dentally while you're in the military, or you get rated at 100%. But you'll get everything else. All medications, no cost. All doctor's appointments, all specialists, x-rays, MRI, CT scan, I don't care what it is, paid for by Veterans Affairs because your service-connected disability compensates for it. And you receive a monthly compensation for the rest of your life based on that disability. Another key point of disability, and I believe I have a slide as we go along that details this one a little further. Once you hit 100% service-connected disability, you qualify for what's an indemnity. The indemnity is once the vet passes away, whatever they're receiving financially continues over to the spouse as long as they live. The benefits of things such as property tax exemptions, all of these things continue even after the veteran's passed away. If the vet's not at 100%, let's say they're at 60%, and they have all these different ratings for different disabilities, and one of those disabilities is what caused them to pass away, that also qualifies for an indemnity that guarantees that financial coverage and medical care continues for the surviving spouse and family. Veterans have far more benefits than they're actually aware that they're supposed to be receiving, and it's all because ignorance exists because VA doesn't tell people about it. That's why I love the privilege of being able to come out and explain a lot of these things to people because it's a great thing. Now, this one right here, this was based off of last year's because I haven't gotten this year's rates yet. I should be getting those in the next few weeks. Now, this is without any dependents and as if it was just the veteran by themselves. They hit, like I said, they hit that magic number of 40%. That is $560 every month for the rest of their life, going up with whatever the federal income, percentage rate is. The 100%, this one right here, it's a lot higher than that. Now I'll be a little transparent. My 100% that I receive each month is $4,120 every month for the rest of my life. That's almost $50,000 a year that I'm able to take care of my family because of things that happened to me while I was in the military. So I always tell people, it's not like I'm cheating the system. I mean, my disabilities are, I got shot, there was shrapnel, I'm blind in my left eye, deaf in my left eye. I mean, I suffered significant injury. So I'm being compensated for those things. A lot of vets suffered similar injuries in different areas, but just never claimed it. Well, they should, because these things are priceless methods of the family being protected financially. The other portion is I also now am completely property tax exempt. I don't pay property tax in the state of Florida. Once you're 100%, you pay no property tax. You don't pay for any vehicle registration. You don't pay, I mean, it's a list of things you don't pay for. My children will never have to pay. I have three. My first one, she's grown. She's in her 30s already. But the two following, my youngest daughter, she's 21. She's going right now. She's at the University of Florida. My son is 16. He's still in high school. My daughter doesn't pay for tuition because she can attend any college in the state of Florida, including living in the dorm, books, meals, all of that's paid for because her father got injured in combat. My son, when he reaches that choice, if he chooses to attend college in Florida, will have that exact same benefit of not having to carry a financial burden once he graduates or my daughter graduates. My oldest daughter, she's like, why don't I get any of that? I was like, well, I didn't have 100% at the time. But these are significant. Now, these, of course, go up when you're married, you have children, you have dependents living in the home, they're higher. But these are simple different compensations that come to the family. And I don't think anyone would say that if they were receiving an additional $560 a month, that wouldn't be significant. Because that's $500. I could use, when we received that one, for me, that was, when I received that 100% rating, I didn't want it so much for myself, but I wanted it for my family. If I were to pass, I want to leave something behind. And my wife said, you served your country, now it's time for your country to serve you. I was like, wow, that's a powerful statement. But for me, I just wanted to make sure and ensure that my family is safe and protected. Yes, ma'am.
When a veteran passes away,
Mm-hmm.
say they're 100%,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it that the spouse would get a portion of
No.
100%?
That's retired pay from the military when it's a portion. Veterans Affairs indemnity is the exact same amount that they were receiving, will continue coming to the family. What she was speaking about is if the vet passes away and the income that's coming into them, does it get reduced? That occurs with retired military pay. Now, I'm retired Army. I took that option when I retired from the military. So it was about 15% that I had to deduct from what I would receive from my retired pay. In the event that I pass, which of course would be inevitable, the remaining of that will continue to my spouse or my oldest living child. So I have those in effect, and now that I'm at 100%, both of those will continue, and my family will be protected with regard to income. Nursing home care is something else I've been asked about, and this is a really great thing. Now, there's 3 different methodologies that they utilize. Of course, the VA community living centers, those are facilities that are at each one of the VA locations. Like, for an example, the one that's in Lake Nona, which is a gigantic hospital area, they have a community living center there. That's a retirement type community for veterans. I always tell vets, those are going to be full at 100% all the time, because of where they're located, so they reach capacity. Now, the state of Florida also has veteran homes that they place people into that from the overflow from the federal. However, just as the federal, the state ones fill up too. That leads to, which is the greatest portion, is the community nursing home program. That's all of the ones that are in the private sector. The VA sends veterans and covers them staying there too. It's all about the method of making the application for them. That's when you move into the area of aid and attendance. We'll get into some of that a little later on as well as we're going through here. But these are all programs that are designed to take care of veterans and their needs. These are things that I think that are just priceless because every vet ages. I always tell people, and a lot of times people don't like to think about it, but I'm sorry, it may be a depressing sound, but we all will become senior at some point. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was like, I'm not going to be a senior. I'm going to be young forever. Guess what? That was a lie. I was lying to myself because now I am pushing up on 60. And because of that, I will in time I will make use of this. My wife and I have already discussed that. And I look forward to it when we cross that bridge. These are the criteria that work with regard to going into a nursing home. These are nursing homes that are more like retirement. They're not the mental health facilities or one where they're going to need intensive medical care. They have to be medically stable, where you're cognizant, have actual ability, that you have have sufficient functional deficits that require that you be inside of a nursing home. Now, when it says deficits, it doesn't mean that you are incapable of taking care of yourself. It's that you need the assistance of a nursing facility. A lot of times these are assisted living facilities, where a lot of times the patients and residents who are in these facilities are capable of taking care of themselves, about 90% efficiency, but there are things that they would need some help with. That's where it comes into play. And then, of course, it's determined as your healthcare provider would make that determination as to when that type of a situation will be utilized. Then, of course, they have nursing home care, where the veterans, we have criteria for the medical people that come to the residence of the veterans themselves if they live at home. Now, this one, you have to be at least 60% or more in service-connected disability. They're enrolled in a hospice program. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are hospice, but you're enrolled because it's potential. That means that you're in what's called palliative care, that hospice may become necessary, but you don't have to be hospice itself. And then vesting is whether you make use of VA facilities or not. Actually, this one I'm going to be taking off of here. I just didn't get it off of here before today because Veterans Affairs now has the option of personal choice. You don't have to go to a VA facility. Excuse me, you can utilize facilities on the outside now, and Veterans Affairs pays for that as well, if it's closer to where you reside. And then, of course, as I was mentioning, they have the health aid where they come to your to your residence to help take care of you. Now, what this is you can't use that and the hospice at the same time. That's double dipping, because then there's two compensations being made for the same service. You can only use either or. You can't use them both at the same time. Now, this one is what's called, it's a pension that the VA has. The pension is a little different than aid and attendance because this one is designed with regard to persons who are just low income and they're not able to completely take care of themselves, and they must be age 65 and older for this particular type. And a lot of times people would think, because the myth is that you had to serve in the military for an extensive amount of time, to qualify for this one, all that you needed was 90 days of active military service. Now, 90 days of active military service includes National Guard and reserves, because when they went into basic training and their AIT or whatever the specialty skill is, it's called in different branches of service, you're going to be there for more than 90 days. Basic training by itself is 90 days. That is active service. So that encompasses anyone that went through full basic training and served in the military and wore their uniform. Then the other portion is that they serve 1 day of service during a defined war period. And a lot of people will go, well, what's a war period? Is like Vietnam War, Korea, World War II. But you also have what's called, there's peacetime, yet you are still in a high state of war. Like right now, although we are not engaged in a war, the world itself, because of how hostile it is considered a war theater, although we don't have troops deployed. So whether or not you went into the combat zone is irrelevant. The fact that you were in the military 1 day during a period when there was conflict going on qualifies. Now, the last at the bottom of there is aid and attendance. Aid and attendance is when you receive not only a pension, but you receive home health care to the max. It's a carte blanche for everything that the VA officers and they're going to bring it to you in your residence, as well as compensation. Now, these are ones that are, of course, housebound or bedridden, and it has to be something that's related to what occurred in the military. That's where it goes back to the service-connected disabilities. Getting veterans registered for almost everything, even if you get 0%, it doesn't matter, it's still rated. And that makes it easier to move into receiving aid and attendance and the compensation. The compensation and pensions can be up to, if you're single, it's about, actually it's a little higher than that now, it's around $1,100 and some change. And then if you have a dependent or a spouse, it's around $1,440 that you receive a month. In addition to service-connected disabilities, in addition to if you're receiving retired or Medicare, Medicaid, any other form of income. This is just an addition to that. to help ease the needs of that particular family. VA offers so much stuff for vets that I just wish to God vets knew more about it. Aid in attendance is an incredible one because veterans that qualify for a VA pension are definitely going to qualify for aid in attendance. One of the things, as we mentioned before, they would need to be housebound and oversee daily activities. You'll have things such as the nurses coming to your home, the doctor coming to make visits, home health care people, bathing, changing clothes, even helping with some of the things around the house are even done with aid in attendance. These are priceless benefits, especially as veterans reach the senior years of elder ages. One of the other great benefits with aid in attendance, it also covers the spouse. Let's say the veteran passes away, well, the surviving widow or widower receives that same aid in attendance because they are the spouse. There are survivor benefits for veteran spouses. It continues not just for the veteran, it's also for the spouse as well. These are when they need regular aid in attendance, the amounts that they receive, aid in attendance with the compensation, it's even higher because now that the financial need for that family would be elevated, and you still continue to receive the service-connected disabilities and any other income that's coming into the home. Now, with aid in attendance, once you start receiving that, that can affect your Medicaid. It can affect because that is an income. However, if you're getting aid in attendance from Veterans Affairs, what you would be getting from Medicare is irrelevant. Your medications are already going to be covered. Your doctors and medical appointments, they're going to come to you. So everything that you will be getting from aid in attendance will replace what you would have been using for Medicare and Medicaid. And it also applies to the spouse. So it continues. You would not lose. You just can't do both. Again, trying to do both, bad idea. They're going to back check you. They find it, fraud. You don't want fraud. Excuse me. One of the ones that's a major one is burial and memorial benefits. Burial benefits are one of the things that, for me, it's the final reverence, shall we say, for that veteran. It's giving them the respect of what they've earned by their service. Now, when it comes to the benefits, veterans, their spouses, and their children are all eligible for burial and the maintenance in a national cemetery. If the family chooses to be buried in a private cemetery, they will cover the cost of the burial for the veteran only, no maintenance. So any of the national cemeteries, like here in Florida, is like Bushnell, of course, the great big one in Arlington, but they have national cemeteries everywhere. The other portion is if the spouse or one of their children dies before the veteran, they still get the privilege of being buried in the national cemetery, even before the veteran is buried there. Now, a lot of things, one of the biggest things that comes up is, I hear the questions a lot, is what gets covered by Veterans Affairs with regard to the burial. Now, these are the areas that are at no cost to the family. Of course, you get the gravesite, the lining, the opening, closing of the grave, the headstone or marker and its care, and the care of the entire cemetery itself. The veteran is also awarded a flag that's going to be done at the ceremony, gets folded, given to the surviving spouse by an officer that's there. What is not covered, I think I got that one on there. That's the private, okay. What's not covered, the funeral is not covered. Here's one of the things that's funny with Veterans Affairs. For almost everything that the VA says that there's a no, there's a subclause that says there's a yes. If the veteran, as an example, they don't cover the cost of the funeral unless the veteran was in the care at a VA facility or died from a military-rated service-connected disability. Then they reimburse up to $300. They don't cover the cost of the casket. The casket itself is not covered by the cost, but they reimburse up to $600. So it's not one that they pay you up front, but they will pay for it on the backside after you do it. A lot of what VA does with regard to the burial and funeral and interments is with regard to refunding it. If it's going to be a cremation, then of course they will reimburse for the cost of the cremation, and they have an interment wall, which is beautiful. I didn't realize what those look like until we moved down here to Florida. This is almost 20 years ago. But when we got there and I went to visit it, it's a beautiful wall where they put the cremated portions into a wall with beautiful plates in front of them. It's really beautiful. It brought tears, I have to admit. But one of the things that for myself, I love visiting national cemeteries. I always go and do it just because they're veterans, and it means something to me. But to actually have seen it, that's something now my wife and I are considering as a possibility that we may do, is use the wall rather than being buried in ground. This is what I was mentioning with regard to if he's going to be in a private cemetery, this is all that's going to be given, and it's only for the veteran. Anyone else that gets buried, all of it is at the expense of the family. Here's where it comes to the reimbursement of burial expenses. If the death is service-connected, then there's a $2,000 amount that's going to be paid to the family. This is where, like I mentioned earlier, where they have a lot of the no's, they got a lot of yeses when you continue reading down how it works. If the burial funeral expense, if it comes because they were hospitalized by the VA at the time of death, or $300 if they're receiving any kind of pension and compensation. Now, the cool part with the hospitalized by the VA, that can be being hospitalized in any hospital now, because VA is personal choice, and they cover hospitalizations at any hospital. Like where I live in Claremont, if I was, heaven forbid, I don't want to wish this on myself, but if something happened and I got hospitalized at South Lake Hospital, and what caused it was because I was having traumatic headaches, which is related to the traumatic brain injury, and I passed away at South Lake Hospital. That is a VA-funded hospital. Therefore, the $700 burial funeral allowance is going to be added, as well as the $2,000. Then there's now the $700 plot allowance. That doesn't apply to national cemeteries, but it does with regard to the private cemeteries. The listing of conditions is way too extensive. I can't even try because it's almost 8 pages in print. Circumstances are extreme, but there is a method that you can receive a plot allowance for that one. Discharge is due to if they got out of the military because of a service-connected injury. They got hurt in the military, and that's what got them put out. That's when I put two of the ones that are majors. And then the next one is, of course, they're receiving pension or compensation from the VA. All of these things allow for the costs to be mitigated from the family and covered by VA. One of the other things that I think is really great is if the death occurred under VA care. That's why I always stress use Veterans Affairs. And let's say that person wants to be buried in Arlington because they qualify for it. Veterans Affairs pays for the transportation cost of the body to be taken up there. That is expensive. I didn't realize how much in the thousands it is to transport a body to be buried somewhere. I didn't realize it. But this one right here, I always stress to the veterans, make use of VA, even somewhat, so that you can qualify for this one. Because this not only applies just to the veteran, but the family members as well as they pass away, if they're to be buried in a national cemetery. The aid and attendance, this is one for the surviving spouses who are available for the indemnity. DIC is an indemnity, death and indemnity coverage. Or if they're receiving or a VA death benefit pension because the vet passed away and their service-connected disability amounts get paid to them. The aid and attendance that I mentioned earlier continues over to the spouse. Now, the amount of this is actually a little higher than that now. It's around $1,220 that they receive each month on top of what's already being received, because this is aid and attendance. This is one of the other portions is, of course, they'll be housebound. A lot of times, it's usually the spouse is usually senior, as well as the veteran. And because of that, they receive care with just about everything that they need. They send someone who does a lot of the shopping for them, the groceries, the making of the meals, the dressing. It's an incredible benefit that comes in, as I always say, in the latter parts of life and when it's definitely necessary. This is an interesting one as well, because I've been asked this question before. If you, let's say that the veteran was married and they get divorced, and from that, the divorced spouse wants some of the benefits, not going to happen. And let's say that they were married and the vet passes away and the widow is receiving, or widower is receiving X amount. As long as they remain a widow or widower, it continues. You get remarried, it stops. But if you get divorced from the new marriage, it starts back up. I think it's the funniest part of it. It's like, if you get married again, I was like, so I don't believe in just living together, but financially it would just make sense to just live together. And then, of course, the death pension is the same. The surviving spouse must not have remarried. But if they do, get divorced. You get paid again. Enrolling for the benefits of a lot of things at VA is online. Everything is electronic. ebenefits.va.gov is a great method of doing it because it's electronic. You get what's called an electronic signature number. That's something, as soon as you get it, write it down, print it out, take a picture of it, whatever. Immortalize it, because what that's going to be is the record that they got it. If they mess up and say, well, we didn't get it. Oh, yes, you did. Here's the number. If they can't pull it up, you qualify immediately. These are methodologies. If you don't want to do it online, make use of all of these because they're all over the place. You can easily Google them, or I have a listing. I think I have some at my table of some of the ones that are here in Lake and Sumter County that are priceless. I got all my information, all the things from right on there. This is a number I want to give to everyone, especially with regard to registering for Veterans Affairs, if you have not yet done it. The toll-free number for it, it's 877-222-8387. Again, that number, it's 877-222-8387. And it's from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. is when they're open. Now, remember I mentioned before, I think I mentioned to you in here, I know I said it a lot when I was out in the hall. There are two factions that work at Veterans Affairs. One is a larger number of them, and then there's the one's the small number. The one that's the large number are federal employees that just don't care. They have a 9-to-5 kind of job, and they're going to give you 9-to-5 kind of work because they work for the federal government. Then you have the 20% that work there that are either veterans, spouses of veterans, or the children of veterans. That group cares, and that's who you want to talk to. So when you call that number and you ring them on the phone because you want to get registered to use the benefits and services of Veterans Affairs, as soon as they answer the phone, they go, hi, thanks for calling Veterans Affairs. My name is Julie. How may I help you? Your first response to them is, well, hi, Julie. I have a question. What branch of the military did you serve in? They go, if they say, well, I didn't, and they stop, hang up, call back. Try and get somebody else. If they say, well, I didn't, but my husband did, or, well, I didn't, but my wife did. Well, I didn't, but my father, my grandfather, well, those are the ones you want to talk to. If they just say, oh, well, I didn't, just hang up, call back. Now, it may take some time on the phone calling, but you want to get a person who actually served and has apathy for those.
Can you request one?
No, it doesn't work like that because they work like almost, she was asking, can you request one? It doesn't work like that because these are people whose job is to do registrations. And they have a whole office of them. This is all that they do. So every time that you call, it's not only going to just go to the same, it doesn't go to the same calls locations. It goes to them all over the country.
So you register online?
You can register online.
And
exactly, either or.
Either or.
But either method, when you do it online or you do it via phone, you're going to still have to bring in to a VA facility a copy of their discharge papers or something that shows that they served in the military. So 95% of what you're going to do is either on the phone or on the website. But then after there, you'll get an address because you put from your address, you'll see where the closest location is to go and just drop that off.
You can do that for a senior parent?
Yes. They have a document that's on there where you would be able to fill in. Because Veterans Affairs does not acknowledge power of attorney forms. They have a consent form that gives family members the ability to operate in the capacity of the veteran. You would just need to get one of those done. That's on the VA site as well. Or you can even just Google it and print that form, fill it out, and just take that in on their behalf. And it's highly effective. I can't help but really press. Do everything that you can to get as many of the benefits that you're eligible to receive, but do them electronically. Do not do them on paper. Now, burial ones, those are only done on paper. Then you can only do those on paper. They don't do electronic because that's, of course, end of life. But everything other, until you get to that point, do everything electronic because all it's going to do is create the immortality for that veteran that served. And it all but guarantees you that you're going to get exactly what it was that you applied for. Same thing when they do service-connected disabilities. They're going to do it electronically because that's the best method of tracking what got filed and where it happened. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a segment that's like a VA pension, am I getting this right?
Mm-hmm. And
then a separate that you have to qualify for a disability from that, or is that all together?
It's two different areas. One is, the first one, what she was asking is if there's a difference between the benefits portion that you would get and then the ones where you get compensated for. Those are two different arenas. The arenas that you would be looking for compensations, it's either going to be service-connected, the pension, or aid and attendance. The benefits is when you move into the healthcare, the medications, anything that's related to the care and upkeep of the veteran and their family. But those are two different areas. But they both fit under two areas. There's three areas of Veterans Affairs. VA is the entire entity itself. But you have Veterans Healthcare, which is VHA. You have the VBA, one of the VBAs, which is the Veterans Benefit portion of Veterans Affairs. And then there's the VBA, which is burial. All three of them operate separate from each other. So whenever you're doing benefits, you're going to be dealing with the VBA portion of Veterans Affairs. Health is the VHA. They're all separate. And the thing that I think that's amusing with it, it's like, you got to be kidding me. They don't communicate. That's why if the vet dies under veteran care, the burial portion doesn't know until you tell them. I think that's the craziest thing. You're the same entity, but you're not talking to each other. So it's they leave that up to the veteran and their family to do that.
They don't know this. I mean,
Yeah.
they wouldn't know this.
No.
Are any of the benefits retroactive?
Some. The question was, are benefits retroactive? Some are. I can't go into a list of all the specifics, but I'll hit one major one because it's one that I hear a lot. Agent Orange is back payable because they will go back to where the first incident and exposure is noted for a veteran. We had one that came under our care with VITAS that was on hospice. And I assisted their family with getting the phone because he was declining rapidly. And with it, we got everything filed. We had to have his family do the forms for the veteran. But we got all those things filed. We got everything set up with regard to show that he was exposed and where he was in there. He passed away, but about 3 months later, because they didn't have direct deposit, so a check came to them in the mail. And his wife, his surviving spouse, she called me. She was like, Thomas, I need to have you swing by because something came in the mail and I'm not sure if this is right or not. And I was like, wow, what's going on? She goes, well, I received the check and it didn't have any information on it. But it came here, and my husband, my deceased husband's name. And I was like, okay. And she goes like, and it's around about, it's a little over $500,000. It's like $520,000. I was like, what? I was like, okay, I'll swing over and we'll look into it. At the bottom, on the part of the you know how you have a check and you have the pieces at the bottom. At the bottom, it had compensation and pension was at the bottom, which is VA C&P section. So we called in, make sure that they put the decimal point in the right place, because if you cash a check and you go and start spending, they go, well, we gave you too much, we want it all back. So we called Veterans Affairs to verify. They were like, yes, it was back paid. He received it because he was first registered as having Agent Orange back in 1977. So the amount that he was to be compensated went from the time he filed, backdated to that point, and they would receive just about a little under $4,000 for the rest of her life. And the first thing that she said is, oh my God, she was really thankful. I was like, well, I mean, he earned it. He served his country. She was like, well, how much can we give you? I was like, Lord knows I wish he could. But I'm not allowed to do that. But what they did is she donated $50,000 to a nonprofit that's within our company that helps people that come on to hospice care that don't have the ability to pay, so that it just gets paid for on its own. But it's episodes like that, yes, it does get back paid. Circumstances allow it, most definitely. Most definitely. Were there any other questions? Well, anything that you have, we'll have a lot of information out on my table out there from VITAS Healthcare. And I'd like to say thank you to all of those who took the time to serve their country. One of the things that I always like to say, and thanks to people who don the uniform, you chose to serve something greater than yourself. Whether drafted or you're going in on your own free will, you donned a uniform and you represented something bigger than you. And in my opinion, that immortalized you. And I thank you for your service. If it were not for the ones that served before me, I would have never had the chance to serve. And because of the time that I was given to serve my country, young men and women today are still donning that uniform by choice. I love that. It's a tradition. I'm fifth generation Army. My oldest daughter is in the Navy, which that's another sermon for another day. But she's a dentist in the Navy. And when she went in to OCS 3 years ago, she went in as a lieutenant. She is now a lieutenant commander. So I flew out to California when she got promoted. I was like, oh my God. So I told her, I was like, what I look forward to now is when you become admiral. I could just say, my daughter's an admiral. But my family is military, has deep military history. So I love to give thanks and praise to those that serve their country as well. And the spouses that served with them, because they were an auxiliary. Thank you all for this afternoon, and I really appreciate your time.